What it is, what it do. I'm A1, this is Destiny, and in this video we're going to be reviewing all of the Crota's in hard mode primary weapons, including the Necrochasm. Now if there's a specific weapon that you want to see, then check out the description, click on the numbers next to the weapon that you want to see, and it'll take you directly to that weapon. But we're going to be reviewing the weapons in the order that I got them, and the first primary weapon that I got in Crota's in hard mode was the Oversoul Edict. Alright, so the Oversoul Edict is a pulse rifle that gives arc damage. So it's going to be useful against any enemy with arc shields, mainly the Hive Knights and Fallen Captains. And I believe the Vex Harpies also have arc shields. And obviously it's going to be useful whenever there's an arc burn. Now out of all the upgrades that the Oversoul Edict has, I would say the full auto mode upgrade is probably the most helpful. The Edict also has upgrades that allows you to aim your weapon faster, increase your ammo capacity, and it also has fitted stock, which increases weapon stability. Now when it comes to PVE, I prefer the max ammo, but when it comes to PvP, I either choose the max ammo or the fitted stock. Anyways, the next upgrade, which can sometimes be useful, is the Darkbreaker upgrade, which allows you to shoot through the night wall of darkness, and I'll show an example of that here in a bit. But in my opinion, if you want to shoot through the night wall of darkness, then I would recommend using the Fang Of Ir Yut heavy machine gun. And after that, there's also another upgrade that increases damage to Hive Majors, and that upgrade's going to be on every single gun in this video except for the Necrochasm, and all of the rest of the upgrades are just upgrades to attack power. Now in these PvP clips, I'm only going to show a couple kills because we got a lot of different weapons we got to review in this video, so I'm only going to show a couple kills. Now the way that I got the Oversoul Edict was by completing the Traverse the Abyss part of the Crota's in raid in hard mode. And it's not guaranteed that this weapon will drop, but I've completed the Traverse the Abyss part 5 times and I got the Oversoul Edict 3 out of those 5 times. So it's definitely a good chance that you're going to get this weapon when you're doing Crota's in hard mode. Now when it comes to PvP, honestly, in my opinion, the Oversoul Edict is not that bad of a weapon. I think the fact that it can be fired in full auto mode makes this a decent weapon to use in PvP. And even though this is a pulse rifle, you kind of want to use the same strategy that you use with any other weapon and try to aim for the head whenever you can. Now when it comes to PvE, out of all the primary weapons that you can get from Crota's in hard mode, the Oversoul Edict is probably my least favorite. And don't get me wrong, it's a really good weapon to use in PvE, but in my opinion, it just seems like it's one of the weaker primary weapons that you get from Crota's in hard mode. And like I mentioned earlier, you are able to shoot through the Hive Knight wall of darkness with this weapon, which I'm about to show an example of right now. But I did notice that lots of times that when the Knights put up their Hive wall of darkness, I usually end up running out of ammo with this weapon, and lots of times I find myself reloading when their wall of darkness is up instead of shooting through their wall of darkness. So when it comes to the Oversoul Edict, it's a pretty good PvP and PvE weapon, but it's definitely not the best in my opinion compared to the other Crota's in hard mode primary weapons. Next up we got the Abyss Defiant, which is an auto rifle that gives solar damage. And right now I'm going to quickly show y'all the different sights that it has. And there's not a real huge difference in the stats between the different sights, so I would just recommend using the one that you feel most comfortable with. And the first upgrade that you can get is the hip fire upgrade, which increases your accuracy while firing from the hip. And the next upgrade, which is called Focus Fire, kind of reminds me of the Suros regime. And what this does is every time you zoom in, the weapon will fire slower, but it will cause additional damage. So when it comes to the weaker enemies, I'll use the hip fire and just spray and pray. But when it comes to majors or ultras or even in PvP, I prefer to use the focus fire because like I said, it deals additional damage when you're zoomed in. Anyways, the next upgrade is the single point sling, which helps you switch weapons faster and move quicker while aiming, which honestly I never used this one. The next one is perfect balance, which gives your weapon extremely low recoil. And this is the one I probably use the most, whether it's in PvE or PvP. This is the one I would recommend using. And the last one is lightweight, which I would only use during those moments when I need that extra agility, like when you're trying to traverse the abyss in Crota's End. But the main upgrade that I wanted to point out was this Lick Bane. And basically what this does is it gives you a chance to disorient wizards every time you shoot them with this weapon. And it not only works for wizards, but it also works for Watchers of Crota, like at the end of the Siege of the Warmind mission. And it also works for Omnigul as well. Now when it comes to PvP, in my opinion, this is probably the best weapon you can use out of all of the primary weapons that you get from Crota's in hard mode. And if you're going to be using this weapon in PvP, I would definitely recommend using the Focused Fire upgrade as well as the Perfect Balance upgrade, which increases your stability. Like I mentioned, it does sort of have that Soros regime type of feel to it. Don't get me wrong, it is not a Soros regime. If you have the Soros regime, you would be better off using that for your primary weapon instead of the Abyss Defiant. But this weapon is still a good weapon to use no matter what game mode you're playing. Now, like I mentioned, when you shoot wizards or watchers of Crota or Omnigul, you'll have a chance to disorient those enemies. And it basically has the same effect of the Titan's flashbang grenade. It'll disorient them for a few seconds, allowing you and your teammates to shoot at them without them shooting back at you. And the way that you get the Abyss Defiant is by completing the bridge part of the Crota's in raid on hard mode. Anyways, that's pretty much it when it comes to the Abyss Defiant auto rifle. Pretty decent when it comes to PvE and PvP, in my opinion. Anyways, next up we got the Fang Of Ir Yut, which is a scout rifle that gives arc damage. And out of all the primary weapons that you get from Crota's in hard mode, this is definitely one of my favorites. And we're going to quickly go through all the different sights that it has, but in my opinion, the first sight has the best stats overall, so that would be the one that I would recommend using, but this weapon's still pretty good no matter what sight you use. Alright, so the first upgrade that you can unlock is called Spray and Play, and what this does is it increases the reload speed of this weapon when its mag is empty, but in my opinion, if you're going to be using the upgrade that gives you the maximum ammo capacity, then you won't really need this Spray and Play upgrade. Anyways, the next upgrade is called Target Mark, and if you have this one chosen, every time you hit an enemy with this weapon, they are briefly highlighted, and I'll be sure to show an example of that here in a bit. Anyways, next up we have high caliber rounds, which really isn't that useful in my opinion. Next up we have Perfect Balance, which is an upgrade that I would use for PvP, but not for PvE. And the next one we have is Field Scout, which increases your ammo capacity. Again, if you're going to be using Field Scout, you don't need to use the Spray and Play upgrade. But if you're going to use the Perfect Balance instead of the Field Scout, then I would suggest using the Spray and Play with the Perfect Balance. Anyways, the next upgrade is called Third Eye, and this is probably the best upgrade that this weapon has. And what the Third Eye does, it makes the radar stay active while aiming down your sight, which can be useful in both PvE and PvP. And just like all of the other weapons except the Necrochasm, it does increase damage to hive majors as well. Now when it comes to PvP, obviously you want to aim for the head, just like with any other weapon. But I found this weapon to be most useful in those mid to long range gunfights. I was also able to get like a 17 or 18 kill streak using this weapon on one of the mid-sized maps, and I was able to get that kill streak by staying towards the outside of the map, as far away from the enemies as I could, and taking them out from mid to long range distance. So out of all the weapons that you can get from Crota's in hard mode, this is probably the best weapon to use for PvP. Now when it comes to PvE, again, this is still one of the best weapons that you can use. And the reason I say that is because it doesn't take a lot of bullets to do a lot of damage, especially if you're aiming for headshots. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but all of the PvE gameplay is from the weekly Nightfall for this week, which had all types of burn. There was an arc burn, solar burn, void burn, all types of burn with this Nightfall, so that's why I chose to use the Nightfall as the PvE game mode to showcase these weapons. Anyways, in my opinion, the highlight upgrade really isn't that useful. The only use I can find for that highlight upgrade is when wizards or watchers or Omnigul puts up the black smoke and it's a little hard to see them. If you end up shooting them with the highlight upgrade unlocked, then you'll be able to tell exactly where they are, even if there's a big cloud of black smoke between you two. And also in those instances where enemies hide behind cover, lots of times you'll end up seeing the highlight above the cover and you can tell exactly where they're at. But even with or without this highlight feature, the Fang Of Ir Yut is still a good weapon to use in PvP or PvE. And the only time that I got the Fang Of Ir Yut was when we defeated Crota on hard mode. Next up we got the Word of Crota hand cannon, which I also got from defeating Crota on hard mode. It's definitely a lot of fun to use, whether you're in PvP or PvE. But in my opinion, this seems more like a PvE weapon instead of a PvP. The Word of Crota is the only primary weapon you'll get from Crota's in hard mode that gives void damage. So it's going to be really useful in taking down enemies that have void shields like the Minotaurs and Scions. Now there really isn't a huge difference when it comes to the sights for the Word of Crota. Basically, the further you go down, the quicker you reload, but you'll have less stability. So that's why I prefer to just use the first sight. Anyways, the next upgrade is called Zen Moment, which increases stability whenever you cause damage with this weapon. And I think this perk works really well with the explosive rounds perk, which we're going to go over in a second. Anyways, the next upgrade is the speed reload upgrade, which honestly I never even use because in my opinion, the other two options seem like they're more useful than speed reload. After that, we have Hammer Forged, which improves range and accuracy, and I would definitely recommend using this one if you're going to be using the Word of Crota in PvP. But again, that's just my preference. And the next one's called Explosive Rounds, and this is the option I choose when it comes to PvE. So in my opinion, the Hammer Forged and the Explosive Rounds option are more useful than the speed reload. Anyways, the last upgrade is called Phantom Gift, and it's kind of similar to the white nail perk that's on the black hammer, but not really. Basically, if you rapidly get 3 precision shots, you'll get an extra round in the magazine, which honestly isn't really that useful for the Word of Crota, especially when it comes to PvP. I really don't find this to be useful at all, but it could be of some use in PvE. And just like all of the other primary weapons, except for the Necrochasm, it has increased damage to Hive Majors. Now, even though I consider this to be more of a PvE weapon, that does not mean that you can't do well with it in PvP either. I know a lot of people say that it reminds them of the Fatebringer, but in my opinion, it kind of feels more like a Thorn to me, minus the lingering damage effect. I don't know, I just get the feeling that every time I shoot this weapon, it feels like I'm hitting a nail with a hammer, especially in PvE. But when it comes to PvP, guys, I would recommend using one of the other ones over this one because in my experience, I had more success using the other primary weapons. But you should still try it out in PvP because to each his own. Now, when it comes to PvE, the Word of Crota is a beast. Definitely one of my favorite PvE primary weapons. I use it all the time for Crota's End, and I also plan on using it for Nightfalls whenever there's a Void Burn. And the last weapon that we're going to review is the exotic auto rifle called Necrochasm. Now, you won't get the Necrochasm from beating Crota's End on hard. Instead, you'll get the Crux of Crota, which is what you'll need in order to upgrade the Eidolon Ally into the Necrochasm. And you get the Eidolon Ally from the Husk of the Pit, and you get the Husk of the Pit by killing Blades of Crota. Anyways, it gives arc damage and it is an auto rifle. Alright, so the first perk for this weapon is called Cascade, and that allows your melee kills to increase the reload speed. And when it comes to the first row of options, I prefer to either use Accurized Ballistics, which is the first option, or Aggressive Ballistics, which is the third option. And the reason I chose those two options, because if you choose the middle option, yes, you'll get the most stability, but you'll also get the least impact. And if you take a look at the impact, and you may have to squint your eyes to see it, you'll see that there's barely any there at all. So it's basically like shooting spitballs for the most part. As for the next upgrade, which is called Cursebringer, this is probably the best upgrade that this weapon has. So whenever you get precision kills with this weapon, you'll have a good chance of causing a Curse Thrall explosion, which will also kill or damage any enemies that are nearby. Anyways, after that, you'll have the single point sling, which allows you to switch weapons faster and move quicker while aiming. You also have the flare magwell, which lets you reload faster, which is the one I prefer to use whenever I'm doing PvE. And you get the fitted stock for the last one, which increases stability. Now, in my opinion, this is a terrible weapon to use for PvP. Like I said, it shoots spitballs. So I'm only going to be using this for PvE. And since that's the case, I'm going to be going with the speed reload because this weapon has a high fire rate, which means you're going to run out of bullets fast. And that's why I chose the speed reload. And the last perk is called Range Finder. And once you have this unlocked, every time you aim your weapon, it'll increase your effective range. And after that, all of the rest of the upgrades are just upgrades to attack power. Anyways, like I mentioned, I definitely don't recommend using this one for PvP. Unless you enjoy shooting people with spitballs, but I mean, more often than not, you're going to end up getting killed because it doesn't have good range. It has terrible impact, and it feels like you have to put at least 10-20 bullets into somebody's head before you kill them. So with all that being said, that's why I don't recommend it for PvP, because when you think about it, it doesn't have range, so you're going to have to get close to people. And whenever you get close to people, the shotguns and the fusion rifles are going to get you kills a lot quicker than the Necrochasm will. And even though it has the highest attack power, you saw the impact that it has. So I don't really think having the highest attack power really means that much when it comes to this weapon. Hopefully they'll do a buff in the future. Let me know what you guys think about the Necrochasm. Do you think it's fine the way it is, or do you think it needs a buff? And plus, there's so many other great weapons that you can use in your primary weapon slot that are a lot better than this one. And the fact that it's an exotic weapon makes it even worse because you can't equip any other exotic with it. You can only have one exotic at a time. So there are a lot of primary weapons out there that are better, and there are a lot of exotics that are better than the Necrochasm. And in my opinion, even the Vex Mytho class is better than the Necrochasm when it comes to PvP, which kind of sucks because you would expect the next raid weapon to be better. But as of right now, the Vex Mytho class is better than the Necrochasm when it comes to PvP. Take my word for it. Anyways, when it comes to PvE, it's not really that bad. As you can see, you can rack up a lot of kills, at least when it comes to the trash mob enemies. And the only reason you're able to do that is because of the Cursebringer upgrade, which gives you a good chance to cause a Curse Thrall explosion whenever you get precision kills. So that's the only reason I would recommend trying it out in PvE. But as of right now, I would not recommend it for PvP whatsoever. Anyways, a lot of hard work was put into this video, so if you enjoyed it or found it useful, don't forget to hit that like button. I'm A1, thanks for watching.